Yes, riddle me that. What is often hot, sometimes cold, and always unpredictable? What am I talking about? If you guessed the weather, I owe you a candy. Hi, I'm Audrey Williams, and we're celebrating World Meteorological Day inside these pages of Jamaica Magazine. What's on the show? An assessment of the government's financial performance during the current fiscal period. Plus, information on the weather, the science behind knowing if it will rain or not. We promise you'll be informed and entertained. Stay with us.
Best thing right now in the country, helping youths got pre-dismiss. It's not easy for a youth who is not working a proper sum of money to send himself to art or any institution. So CSJP now funding you. When more time them tell you the figure, you know, miss, how much it costs, we could find that amount of money. So what they are doing, miss, wonderful. In our community, you might have section which divided up. So when all of us now start to go to class together, miss, starting, you have person who are going to sit left, some are going to sit right. But you see, by weeks and weeks after, all of us just come as one, miss. You even start running both together, miss. When you start know a thing now, it's different from when you're not knowing. Because growing up, I always hear people say, don't go there, so don't go there, so. Alright, but knowing each other now, miss, you really see that it is not as our people put it at times. It is different.
The Citizen Security and Justice Program, CSJP, an initiative of the Ministry of National Security, promoting peace and building communities while empowering the lives of unattached youth one day at a time.
Is your silence worth the life of a child? Report child abuse. Call the Office of the Children's Registry at 1-888-PROTECT. Be the change. Speak out. Protect our children.
The 2013-2014 financial year closes on March 31. This fiscal period has been challenging, but the government remains steadfast in its economic reform program, and the results are showing various sectors recording growth. Our net international reserves has also improved. So what does this mean for you and me? On this week's edition of Issues, financial expert Ralston Hyman breaks it down.
Thanks for joining us for Issues and Answers. I'm Ian Boyne. Today we talk the economy. We have with us the country's premier financial journalist and economic commentator, Mr. Ralston Hyman. We thank you for your company.
Thank you very much.
Ralston, good to have you
Pleasure
on
to be
the
here.
show. Last week, the IMF gave a positive review of the economy. The board formally announced that we had passed the third test, successfully passed the third review. What are some of the indicators that the macroeconomy is moving in the right direction?
Well, I've seen the fiscal deficit. When we entered this agreement with the International Monetary Fund, remember we had an agreement in 2010, February 2010. At that time, the fiscal deficit was running at over 10% of GDP. The overall deficit, which includes the public sector agencies such as the Jamaica Urban Transit Company, the National Water Commission, was about 12.75% of GDP.
Okay.
We had given them a commitment at that time that will bring those down to zero, balance the budget in a way. What we're seeing now is that when we entered, we were at about 6% of GDP, and given the outcome up to January of this fiscal year, we are well on track to achieving a balanced budget.
I think that's for the first time,
For the first
18
time
years.
in about 18 years. So that's a remarkable achievement.
Remarkable achievement.
Yes. When we also look at the external side, because we must know there's a domestic account and there's the external account, which is measured by what we call our trade deficit. which measures the difference between physical imports and physical exports, as well as the current account deficit, which is a broader measure.
Yes.
In a sense, it measures our dependence on the rest of the world to satisfy our current needs. So that is after you take into the trade deficit, the flows from remittances, investment flows. What we're seeing is that the current account deficit is now less than 10% of GDP. It came out at about $900 million for the first 9 months of last year. A significant improvement from the dizzying heights of $2 billion, about 18% of GDP
18%?
in 2008.
Okay, yes.
So that's a significant achievement.
In a relatively short time.
In a relatively short period of time. We have also seen the net international reserves moving from $917 million in January to $1.1 billion in February, and the target for March is 1.246. So we're edging closer to the target. So those are significant improvement in the fiscal accounts. On the other side, a significant number of structural reforms have been passed. What we call the fiscal rule. That bill was passed by the lower house earlier last week, and we expect the Senate to also pass that bill. That seeks to lock in the gains we have made from bringing the fiscal accounts down. Now, why this is important?
Yes.
If we look at Jamaica's history, for 45 of our 51 years of independence, we have been running fiscal deficits. So there is no culture of fiscal discipline in Jamaica. Fiscal deficit is simply the government is spending more than it is pulling in from revenue and grants.
Yes.
So what the IMF wants us to do is have what we call a fiscal rule, which sets expenditure limits, revenue limits, deficit targets, and debt limits. They want us to bring the debt burden down to about 100% of GDP by 2015-2016 and to about 60% by 25-26. Now, it means that if the government collects revenues of 27% of GDP, which is about the average, it means that our expenditure must be 27% of GDP or below 27% of GDP, except in exceptional circumstances where there's a natural disaster. That enables us to bring fiscal discipline, and it improves investor confidence, because an investor wants to know that there's a certain amount of certitude that this massive debt burden that we have built up will not be built up again. The debt burden is now 139% of GDP, coming down from the dizzying heights of 140, 145 in 2007, 2008. So those are significant achievements. Yes.
And foreign investment has also recovered from the low of 2011.
Precisely.
Where it was over 200 and odd
$1 million
it's
US
gone
dollar.
to over 400.
Right. So investors are responding to the measures that we are taking. Those measures are designed to improve investor confidence in the Jamaican economy. Confidence is important to investments. Investments are important to growth and job creation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was there a more a painless way or a less painful way, Ralston? Could we have done it any other way? Because people are feeling the pressure. So we're passing the IMF test yet, but you know, the pressure is on the people. How you respond to that?
Okay. We want our people to understand. Over the last 50 years or so, the Jamaican economy has averaged a growth rate of 0.8% per annum. Simply translated, the economy has only grown by 40% in 50 years. That's not good enough. Right. And a number of factors are responsible for that. The high debt burden, the high level of indiscipline in Jamaican society, the lack of innovation, the weak productivity levels. When we look at the data, Jamaica's productivity levels, total factor productivity, we're not just talking about the productivity of labor, we're talking about the productivity of capital and labor, has been declining at an annual average rate of 1.5% per annum since 1973. Now, if you track the movements in the exchange rate and our productivity levels, you will see that they closely approximate, because the value of our exchange rate bears a direct correlation with your productivity levels.
Let's take the break here and explain that further. Ralston Hyman, premier financial journalist, speaking to us on Issues and Answers, clarifying issues on the economy. We take a break, but we'll be right back.
We want a productive Jamaica. We are not productive Jamaicans. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go, we should understand. Productivity's the way to go for all us Jamaicans. Small business, big business, old and young. We are tell every woman and man. We want growth and prosperity for a better nation with a building plan. So we can build our product and sell our product and put more money in our hand. Our economy can rise to a level and build a better nation. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go. We should understand. Productivity to move forward on this land. Productivity, that's the way to go. We should understand. Productivity.
Productivity, Pathway to Prosperity. A message brought to you by the Jamaica Productivity Center, a department of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security.
Welcome back. We're talking the economy. Financial journalist and member of the Economic Program Oversight Committee, Ralston Hyman, is with us. Ralston, at the break, you were talking about the relationship between productivity and the exchange rate.
Yes. Now, productivity is simply the ratio of output to input. Now, if it is costing us too much to produce a unit of goods and services compared to our trading partner, then it must reflect in the exchange rate. Additionally, the efficiency at which you produce also impacts your inflation rate. And the clue to the equilibrium or market clearing exchange rate between a country and its trading partners is the difference between the average inflation rate. Now, if you look at the inflation rate in the US, our major trading partner, it's 1.5%.
Yeah.
If you look at the Eurozone, it is 0.7%. If you look at the UK, it's 2%. If you look at Canada, it is 0.8%.
Yes.
So the average for our trading partner is about 2.5%. But our inflation rate is about 7.1% for the fiscal year to date, and point to point we are running at about 10%.
Yes.
So it means...
And previously we were running double-digit
Precisely.
inflation rates.
Precisely. So it means that the exchange rate must adjust.
Yes.
You with
So
me?
when we hear calls that the government must do something about the exchange rate and intervene, what?
No, the government cannot arbitrarily do that.
Can't
The exchange rate is
arbitrarily.
a function of the demand for and the supply of foreign exchange. So if you are running massive trade deficit, our trade deficit came out at 4.22 billion US for the first 11 months of last calendar year. A slight improvement on the 4.5 billion for the previous calendar year. So we're going down, but we're still not going down fast enough. That was mainly due to a reduction of oil prices because our exports continue to fall.
Yes.
Exports were down by $111.5 million. You with me? Similarly, the current account deficit, which is a broader measure which takes into account the remittance and tourism flows, is still almost $1 billion, still above the international norm of 3% of GDP. What that is saying is that the demand for foreign exchange is greater than the supply of foreign exchange. So there's no magic to that. A price is set by the interaction of demand and supply.
Yes.
You with me?
Yes.
So the exchange rate cannot be stabilized until we significantly improve the flow of foreign exchange in the economy. And this is where the IMF comes in. The major function of the IMF is to provide balance of payment support for countries which are experiencing difficulties in paying for their imports. Therefore, the more you meet the IMF performance criteria is the more you build confidence.
Yes.
So the money that we get from the IMF, that is not as important as the confidence which the IMF seal of approval provides to investors and suppliers.
So what you're saying is that the very program that we are pursuing, as difficult as it is and as painful as it is what is going to help us to deal with the unfavorable exchange rate that we complain about.
It is indispensable. Without the program, the situation would have been worse. And we want our people to understand that without the IMF program, our economic situation would be worse.
So there's no alternative.
So there's no alternative to the IMF program.
There's no alternative.
No alternative to the IMF program.
Painless way.
No painless way. We tried that in 1979 and we all knew what happened, right? So there's no alternative to the IMF program. We just have to stick to the program. The more we stick to the program and the more we meet those targets, is the more investor confidence builds, the more investments we'll get, and the more we'll be able to accelerate economic growth and create jobs, which is ultimately what the people in the streets want.
But what about the cry of many in the streets that we're not feeling the program, that it's not benefiting us? When will people start to feel the benefits? That's the people's test.
We have gone 3 tests. The most difficult one is this one that is coming up for the March quarter, because we have to meet the primary surplus target of 111.5 billion. Just for our listeners, the primary surplus is simply the amount of money that is set aside to service the debt. The bigger your debt burden, the bigger the primary surplus you have to set aside, and that is why reducing the debt is so important. Because the bigger the debt, the more government revenues will have to be set aside to service the debt rather than to build schools.
7.5.
Yes, rather than to build schools or to pay public sector workers.
Yes.
You with me? So we have to meet that target. Now the key target is putting the NIR to $1.246 billion. We believe that we'll be able to hit those targets. Once we hit those targets, confidence will build. Why we need to build the NIR? The NIR measures our capacity for foreign trade. When an investor or supplier looks at the NIR, they get the comfort level when the NIR is higher, that if they send goods and services to Jamaica, they'll be able to get paid. Investors who invest, they want to repatriate their profits. So the higher the NIR, they will be more confident to invest in the country. So these things are not things that we're just doing for doing sake. These are important to the stability of the economy. And the poor benefits from that stability. You with me? Yeah.
What about jobs, though?
Well, when we investments drive jobs. Confidence drive investments. The more we pass the IMF test, the more investors, both local and international, become more confident. And the more we get the project, we have a number of expansion projects taking place. The more these projects come, is the more jobs we'll be able to create. We are about expansion in the tourism sector. When we look at the economy, we saw in the September quarter, the recovery was 0.6, then we moved to 1.4 during the December quarter. We expect this to continue. The recovery is being driven by investments and expansion and output in many sectors of the economy: agriculture, mining, real estate, all those sectors.
You were very harsh in criticizing the government up to a few months ago, very harsh on the Minister of Finance.
Yes.
Is it the facts that have led you to change, Ralston?
Well, when we look at the numbers, when we look at the situation in relation to the multilateral agencies, we have had 14 agreements with the International Monetary Fund. This is our 14th agreement. And when we look at the February 2010 agreement, the performance, we only successfully navigated one test. That created a credibility problem with the multilateral agencies. We underestimated the extent of that credibility problem. And that was one of the factors why it took so long for the current administration to re-engage with the International Monetary Fund, because there was a view within the international community just allow Jamaica to fail. It wouldn't have any impact on the international economy because Jamaica is so small.
That's true.
So the current minister had to deal with those problems. You with me? So we were very harsh in criticizing because it was taking too long to re-engage the IMF, and that had a negative impact.
So you feel he has acquitted himself well?
Well, yes.
He has done well.
Yes.
The country's premier economic analyst and financial journalist, Ralston Hyman, talking to us about the economy. We know he's a man who speaks his mind. We thank you for your company. Next week we'll be back. Until then, Ian Bourne wishing you a pleasant day.
That can easily change if we allow the cutting of trees, forest fires, animal grazing, crop cultivation, or improper dwellings to destroy our forest reserves. Help preserve Jamaica's flora and fauna. If you know or suspect that someone is hurting our forest reserves, call 1-888-FORESTS. Remember, protecting our forests means sustaining our lives.
Isn't it nice and convenient that we can get weather updates every morning before we venture out? Know ahead of time if we should dress warm or cool? Mother Nature can't be tamed, but there are inventions that can predict her mood. Take a look.
Of course, all eyes are on Hurricane Ivan at this time, where we see that we are on the outer fringe of the system. Some of the bands are spilling some showers over the Jamaica area. Just a warning that this thing is actually coming across the area.
A television broadcast of national importance. A critical prediction that possibly saved lives and property. A prediction that came at the end of a process that began with some pretty sophisticated technology.
Weather forecasting is trying to determine the changes in the atmosphere.
Several methods are applied to gather weather data, From simple observation
It's critical to assess the clouds because the cloud is one of the most important elements of determining a forecast.
to the use of satellites, radars, buoys, and weather aircraft. Forecasters from around the world share information generated by advanced computer software and remote sensing equipment, such as this automatic weather station. Working together, data is synchronized or matched, making it possible to predict the weather from virtually anywhere in the world. Weather collecting devices like buoys, which are equipped with special sensors and networked to computer software, are strategically placed and anchored along the seas or left to drift in response to ocean currents and winds. These networks of buoys provide forecasters with hourly updates on marine measurements related to wind conditions, barometric pressure, air and sea surface temperatures, as well as wave data. The Doppler radar is another useful tool. Radar stands for radio detection and ranging, and it works based on a series of principles named for Austrian physicist Johann Christian Doppler. This sophisticated instrument allows forecasters to monitor the speed and direction of severe weather systems. Data from all sources are fed to central points for analysis and comparison and are shared all over the world.
And in doing that, we are able to produce what we call a synoptic chart. In producing this chart, it gives us a picture of what is happening across Jamaica and the region. Region here meaning the Caribbean area. After we do that, then we also look at what we call weather prediction models. These models enable us to determine what is going to happen in the future. What we do with the model is that we make an analysis of the model and we make a comparison between the model forecast and what we had done on the synoptic chart.
At this stage, a determination can be made as to what will happen over the next 12 to 24 hours with an outlook for up to 5 days.
In looking at the information, then we determine what the features are and what the influence of these features would be across Jamaica, which would indicate if the day is going to be cloudy, if it's going to be fair, or we expect showers, thunderstorm, or a very windy day.
From the more urgent situations, such as an approaching hurricane, to the less crucial, like where to go for a sunny vacation, news on the weather is always useful. And very important for fishermen and others who must navigate the seas for a living.
We also issue marine products, so persons who are going out to sea would know what the conditions will be across the seas. We have aviation products that are issued specifically to aviation users that would enable them to make a safe flight.
This is a live feed from the runway. So all the information that is displayed here is what's happening currently on the runway, and this is what is critical to all the airlines.
Information on climatic conditions is also provided to farmers and persons in construction, as well as those doing research on the environment. So the next time you see this,
Some scattered shower activity over some coastal areas on the northern side of the island.
remember, weather prediction isn't a guessing game. It's a scientific process involving sophisticated technology, providing useful information for industry, for research, for disaster management, and for life.
All residents immediately evacuate the area.
Clean, beautiful beaches and oceans have always been an important part of life. We can make a contribution whether we live on the shoreline or miles away.
Yes, it's World Meteorological Day, And the commemoration is a reminder of how we humans continue to impact planet Earth. Unfortunately, some of us have not been appreciative of her water streams and forests. As a result of negative actions, the impact of climate change is increasing. A focal point network has been established to support the government's implementation of the Climate Change Policy Framework and Action Plan. The network, consisting mainly of public sector workers, will collaborate to implement the provisions under the framework. The representatives will be given specialized training to enhance their skills and competencies so they can mainstream climate change considerations in the targeted plans and policies of government ministries and departments. By doing this, there is some assurance that the policy framework will be in place to enable us as a country to respond in a more appropriate manner to the inevitable impacts of climate change. Climate change presents us with immense challenges, but with proper planning and a robust education program, we can turn the tide and continue to have a beautiful nation.
In 2012, 11,964 persons were victims of fire. The Jamaica Fire Brigade wants you to be prepared. Plan your escape route. Install and maintain fire extinguishers. Practice fire drills. Look out for warning signs of dangerous wiring.
Don't cook and leave it unattended. Don't overload circuits. Don't allow children that are not of the age of 12 and untaught to be fooling around with fire in general.
Once a fire starts, you need to call us.
For more information on fire prevention, contact the Jamaica Fire Brigade. Call 922-2523 or 922-0007 or visit their website jfb.gov.jm.
Our message to the public is prevent, prevent, prevent.
The Jamaica Fire Brigade, saving lives, protecting property.
As we go forth in our daily lives in this brand new week, we leave you with this. Wherever you go, no matter what the weather, always bring your own sunshine. Words of writer Anthony J. D'Angelo. We hope we were able to brighten your day. Tell us what you think. Drop us a line at jamaicamagazine@jis.gov.jm or send a tweet at JIS News. Click on jis.gov.jm where you may find more news, stories, and features on all the issues featured in today's magazine. See you soon, and remember, it's Champs Week, so get your school gears on. I'm Audrey Williams. Keep it cool.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.